So I'm here live today with my friend, Dr. Debi Silber, and she is the founder of the Post Betrayal Transformation Institute and is a holistic psychologist, health, mindset, and personal development expert, and the author of Trust Again, and is a two-time number one international bestselling author of The Unshakable Woman and From Hardened to Heal, the effortless path to release resistance, get unstuck, and create a life you love. So that book is what we're going to mostly focus on today. Her recent PhD study on how we experience betrayal made 3 groundbreaking discoveries that changes how long it takes to heal. In addition to being on Fox, CBS, The Dr. Oz Show, TEDx twice, and more, she's an award-winning speaker and coach dedicated to helping people move past their betrayals, as well as any other blocks that prevent them from health, work, relationships, confidence, and happiness, and the happiness they want most. So I want to give my own little introduction of Debi. She's a lovely human being, as you can probably already tell. When I met her, she was still finishing her PhD and kind of conceptualizing these things she was going to do. And none of it had really come into the physical world, I wouldn't say. But then you just exploded. You know, you've got this robust institute. You wrote 2 books really quickly. They both, like the first one sold out super quickly, right? From Amazon. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so amazing. And this is her second time on the show. I know this topic may seem, we're going to talk about betrayal and healing. It may seem a little bit like off our normal topic, but the first recording, a lot of people watched it. So I know that, you know, people are interested. They may not even self-identify, which is why we don't have like a lot of people on here today. But I think like later they're like, oh, I actually do need to learn about that. And like you said in your bio, you know, emotional trauma and stuckness can definitely affect your health. I think it may be a bigger factor in your happiness than what you eat and how you take care of your body, right? Because you can be fit and miserable, unfortunately, right?
That is 100%. And actually, and I don't know if you want to talk about the study, but one of them, one of the discoveries that we found out about, this was mind-blowing. There's actually this collection of symptoms, physical, mental, and emotional, so common to betrayal. It's known as post-betrayal syndrome. And I don't know if I shared this on the last time we spoke, but we've had at this point over 40,000 people take the post-betrayal syndrome quiz to see to what extent they're struggling. A few things about that. The first thing is we've all been taught time heals all wounds. Well, I have the proof when it comes to betrayal, that's not true. Because there's a question that says, is there anything else you'd like to share? And people write things like, my betrayal happened 35 years ago and I'm unwilling to trust. My betrayal happened 15 years ago. It feels like it happened yesterday. But you know, every few months I pull the stats just to see where people land. And this may be something that can really serve your group. Can I share some?
Go ahead, please.
Okay, so now this is out of figure 40,000 plus people, men, women, every age, just about every country is represented here. So 78% constantly revisit their experience. 81% feel a loss of personal power. 80% are hyper vigilant. That's exhausting. 94% deal with painful triggers. And those triggers can take you right down. These are the most common physical symptoms. 71% have low energy. 68% have sleep issues. 63% have extreme fatigue. Those are your adrenals that have crashed. 47% have weight changes. 45% have digestive issues. That's anything from Crohn's, IBS, diverticulitis, constipation, diarrhea, you name it, your guts are wrecked. Mentally, 78% are overwhelmed. 70% are walking around in a state of disbelief. 68% are unable to focus. 64% are in shock. 62% are unable to concentrate. So imagine you can't concentrate, you have a gut issue, you're exhausted, and like you're supposed to raise your kids, you're supposed to work. That's not even the emotional ones. Emotionally, 88% have extreme sadness. 83% are very angry. 82% feel hurt. 80% have anxiety. 79% are stressed. So here's why I wrote the book Trust Again. Ready? 84% have an inability to trust. 67% prevent themselves from forming deep relationships because they're afraid of being hurt again. 82% find it hard to move forward. 90% want to move forward, but they don't know how.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. I always I always do this to you. I always like equate toxic mold with betrayal, whether or not you like it. And some of those things might not line up, but I think it goes back to what I said earlier. Like a physical trigger could affect so many things, but an emotional trigger can affect so many things too. And both times you have to go the root. It's going to take some time to work through, right? It's not just time. I say the same thing with mold. It's not just time. Don't think you can just like move and eat some broccoli and you're good to go. You're going to have to take steps. You're going to have to go to experts. Yeah. And I think we all can think of someone we know who just didn't get over something, right? In our family, like.
Yeah. And not even that, think about it. When you have something like betrayal, which is such an emotional trauma, you're less resistant to symptoms, illness, condition, disease. So maybe, here you were able to fight things off a little bit better, but now you can't handle things the same way. So it is so widespread. Now, here's the crazy part. It doesn't even have to be, these symptoms don't have to be because you were like fresh out of a betrayal from like a family member, partner, friend, coworker, self. This could be a betrayal that happened, I'm not kidding, 40, 50 years ago, decades ago. And, we just don't, and as I share if you want, I could share the 5 stages, you'll see how something that happened so long ago. And here's the thing, it doesn't even have to be a betrayal. It could be something you interpreted or misinterpreted. You made it to mean something. You formed a set of beliefs around it. And that's how you're moving through life. And then your mind always wants to prove you right. So you look for confirming evidence. So like, here's like the simplest example. And I talk about this from Hardened to Healed. Let's imagine you're young and you have like earth-shattering news to share with your mom, right? And she's in the kitchen on the phone. And she shushes you. She's like, shh, because she's on the phone. Right at that very moment, you could have made that to mean I don't matter. So now imagine if you take that and you run with it, and then you put some emotion behind it, you put some feelings behind it, you keep feeding it, now it becomes a belief. And then your mind's like, oh, I didn't know you want me to run this all day. I'll just run it in your subconscious like a little program here. Go about your business. And all day long, we have between 60 and 80,000 thoughts a day. About 80% of them are negative. There's some form of I don't matter showing up throughout your entire day. And then you will find that confirming evidence. And then it just becomes who you are.
Yeah, it's so true. When we think about things that happened to us in childhood, whether it was something, a real betrayal like abuse, or just like you said, something more subtle. I've been having to work through that stuff from my own childhood. Like, I had good parents. I'm from a good family, but just certain, they had their stuff and I developed my stuff, my ways of coping that I really have to unravel. And I think one of the beauties of going through something traumatic is it's an opportunity to question all of it, right? I know that you did in your own story and you made something beautiful out of it, which is what I encourage in mold as well. Like take something horrible and make it into something beautiful and really transform your life. So do you want to talk about the stages, Debbie, to kind of set us up?
Sure. So when and just to back up a little bit, nobody studies betrayal unless you have to, right? So it was just 2 horrible betrayals that catapulted me into this PhD program in transpersonal psychology of transformation and human potential, because I was just changing so much. I didn't quite understand it. Then it was time to do a study. So I studied betrayal, what holds us back, what helps us heal, and what happens to us physically, mentally, and emotionally when the people closest to us lie, cheat, and deceive. That study led to 3 discoveries. So the first was what we talked about, that post betrayal syndrome. Okay. And then there's a third discovery, but the second one, to me, this was the most exciting. And this was, while we can stay stuck for years, decades, a lifetime, and so many of us do, if we're going to fully heal from the symptoms of post betrayal syndrome to this whole completely healed state called post betrayal transformation, we're going to go through 5 now proven predictable stages. And what's even better about that is we even know what happens physically, mentally, and emotionally at every one of the stages. And we know what it takes to move from one stage to the next. So that's good news, because now we know healing's predictable. right? If someone's just willing to do what it takes, they will predictably move through their experience. So it's what we teach within the Institute. It's what all my coaches are certified in. It's what's in Trust Again. Here are the 5 stages, a distilled version. Okay. So stage 1 is before it happens. And this is, if you can imagine 4 legs of a table, the 4 legs being physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. What I saw with everybody, me included, was a real heavy lean on the physical and the mental, thinking and doing, and not really prioritizing the emotional and the spiritual feeling and being, right? That's not to say if you're busy, you're going to be betrayed. It was the typical profile I saw. But imagine a table with only 2 legs, right? Easy for that table to topple over. That's us. Stage 2, by far the scariest of all of the stages. And this is shock, trauma, D-Day, Discovery Day. And it's the breakdown of the body, the mind, and the worldview, right? This is where it's like that person takes a mask off and reveals who they've been this whole time. And what happens is you've just ignited the stress response. So now you're headed for every single stress-related symptom, illness, condition, disease. Your mind is in a complete state of chaos and overwhelm. You cannot wrap your mind around the information you just learned. Makes no sense. And your worldview has just been shattered. Your worldview is your mental model. It prevents chaos. It governs you. Don't go there. Trust this person. This is how life works, right? And in a moment or series of moments, every rule you've ever had is no longer. Your entire worldview has been shattered. So the bottom is bottomed out on you, but a new bottom hasn't been formed yet. So it's terrifying. But think about it. If the bottom were to bottom out on you, what would you do? You'd grab hold of anything to stay safe and stay alive. And that's stage 3. Survival instincts emerge. It's the most practical out of all of the stages. If you can't help me, get out of my way. How do I survive this experience? Where do I go? Who can I trust? How do I feed my kids? But here's the trap. Once you've figured out how to survive, because it feels so much better than the shock and trauma of where you just came from, we think it's good. And because we don't know there's a stage 4 or stage 5, transformation doesn't even begin until stage 4. But because we don't know there's anywhere else to go, we start planting roots here. We're not supposed to, but we do. And 4 things happen. The first thing is we start getting these small self benefits. You get to be right. You get your story, right? You get someone to blame. You get a target for your anger. You get sympathy from everybody you tell your story to. You don't have to do the hard work of learning to trust again. Can I trust you? Should I trust you? I forget, I'm not trusting anybody. And so you plant deeper roots. You're not supposed to, but you don't know that. And then the next thing that happens is now, because you're here longer than you should be, your mind does things like, well, maybe you're not all that. Maybe you deserved it. Maybe this, maybe that. So you start planting deeper roots. Again, you're not supposed to be here, but you don't know. Now, because these are the thoughts you're thinking, and this is kind of your energy, like energy attracts like energy. So now you're calling situations and circumstances and people and relationships towards you to confirm, yup, this is where you belong. The misery loves company crowd, by the way, they come around now. It gets worse, but I'll get you out of here. Because it feels so bad, but you don't know there's anywhere else to go. Here's where you resign yourself. You're like, this is terrible, but I better figure out a way to make this work. So right here is where you start using food, drugs, alcohol, work, TV, keeping busy, social media, reckless behavior, whatever, anything to numb and avoid and distract yourself from what's so painful to feel or face. So think about it. You do that for a day, a week, a month. Now it's a habit, right? A year, 10 years, 20 years. And I can see someone 20 years out and say, that emotional eating you're doing, or that numbing in front of the TV, or that drinking you're doing, do you think that has anything to do with your betrayal? And I'm not kidding. They would look at me, Bridget, they would look at me like I'm nuts. And they would say, that happened 20 years ago. But do you see, all they did was put themselves in stage 3 and stayed there. That makes sense?
Yeah, for sure. So we'll keep going through the stages, but we're going to unpack this one more, right? How to get out of it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why I wrote From Hardened to Healed. It is just for the stage 3ers because by far, hands down, that's where people land and stay. And it's almost harder to get out of it the longer you're in it. Anyway, when you're willing to let go of the small self benefits, grieve, mourn the loss, bunch of things you need to do, you move to stage 4. Stage 4 is finding and adjusting to a new normal. So here's where you acknowledge, I can't undo my experience, but I control what I do with it. And I always use the example of if you've ever moved to a new house, office, condo, apartment, whatever, your stuff's not all there, right? It's not quite cozy yet, but it's going to be okay. And when you're in this mental space, what you're doing is you're turning down the stress response. You're not healing just yet, but at least you stop the massive damage you had been causing in stages 2 and stage 3. What's interesting about stage 4 also is if you were to move, you don't take everything with you. You don't take the things that don't represent who you want to be the minute you're in that new space. And what I found was if your friends weren't there for you, you don't take them with you. Right here, you've outgrown them. And people say to me all the time, what the heck? I've had these friends 10, 20, 30 years. Is it me? Yes, it is. You're undergoing a transformation. And if they don't rise, they don't come. So it's very common to change our friends at this stage. So if you're experiencing that, know that it's very common. When you're in this mental space, you're making it cozy, you're making it home, you move into the 5th most beautiful stage. And this is healing, rebirth, and a new worldview. The body starts to heal. Self-love, self-care, eating well, exercise. You didn't have the bandwidth for that earlier. Now you do. Your mind is healing. You're making new rules. You're making new boundaries based on what you see so clearly now. And you have a new worldview based on the entire experience. And the 4 legs of the table, in the beginning, it was just all about the physical and the mental. By this point, we're solidly grounded because we're focused on the emotional and the spiritual too. Those are the 5 stages.
Yeah, I remember from Trust again, you had a lot of examples and everybody was doing some kind of practice, right? Well, could any number of things, meditation or prayer groups or what have you. And it's interesting in this culture, not everyone would say that's needed, right? Mm-hmm. But I went through the same, let me just finish typing this. That's the same process. And I would agree with that aspect. Like I clearly wasn't tending that enough beforehand. And now I'm tending it a lot more. And I think because especially when you're going through the trauma, you have to tend to it, that it becomes more of a habit. So was before the trauma, it'd be like up and down. Now I'm paying attention. Now I'm not. I mean, I still use my meditation every timer every day, and I'm really good about it. So
it's such an important piece. And here's the thing too, it's one of those things. And I saw it in the study. There was a big move towards spirituality, actually, and it was people who were very religious moved towards the spiritual side of their religion. Some abandoned religion completely. They felt like it wasn't supporting them. Some who weren't really doing much of anything became spiritual. And I was wondering about that. What was that about? Because it was way more than just tending to, let's say, the emotional. And it was because of this. When you've been betrayed, you don't trust your betrayer. And you just lost trust in yourself because you're like, I'm a brave person. How did I not see? How did I not know? How did this happen right by, under my nose? So then it's like, if we don't trust the person we trusted the most, and now we don't trust ourselves, how the heck are we going to trust someone we, don't know that well? Or how can we trust in anything or anyone? So when it came to something like spirituality, there was this real desire to feel connected to something, but it was also, okay, you know what? I have to trust in someone, bigger than me. And there was sort of that move towards spirituality, but also to answer your question, so often we feel, okay, I've been betrayed. Let me just see a therapist. Now here's the problem. If that therapist, first of all, isn't highly skilled in moving someone through betrayal, it actually does more harm than good. We have a lot of people coming into the Institute with therapy trauma. But even if it's a great therapist, that's dealing with it on one level. Betrayal hits us physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. So it all needs to be tended to.
Therapy. What did you call it?
It's therapy trauma. We actually, Yeah, we actually have a coach she's pursuing her certification now, and every coach within our community holds a specialty. We have coaches who specialize in narcissism and divorce and reconciliation and chronic pain and addiction. And she already knows her specialty, and it's going to be therapy trauma because it's so common.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, and not to throw therapists under the bus. They certainly have their super great value, but they can kind of only stay in a certain lane because of their licensure and stuff. Whereas coaches can, I was just talking to a friend about this yesterday, and she was like, I don't want a therapist. I want a coach, and I want a coach who specializes in something particular. And we were just chatting about that because I've had, I think, 3 different coaches help me through my divorce, and they're all a little different, and they all know when to push me or not push me, and say, throw it down. It's time to throw it down. And, or just really like encourage my self-love when I need that. And it's nice to have that freedom to use all those different tools. So that's really awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a psychologist, but I'm a coach first. I've been a coach for 30 years. So there's definitely that place where we need to unpack it, but then, what are we doing with it? And I mean, in the Institute anyway, it's very forward moving. It's all about, okay, what stage are you coming in at? And how do we move you to the next and the next and the next? Because you've been through the hardest part of it already. You owe it to yourself to transform.
Yeah, when an individual is going through a thing, it feels so unique. It's the first time they've gone through it. But for a coach who's seen thousands of people go through the same thing, they know exactly what stage you're in. They don't tell you it. Go ahead.
And our quiz tells you exactly what stage. I mean, you will just know. It's the most obvious thing, and it takes less than a minute, to take the quiz, but because we know what someone would likely be thinking, saying, feeling at each stage. So the beauty of that is then, they just choose which most closely resonates to what they're feeling, and we know exactly where they are, and then we know what they need.
Okay. Let's just take a quick break to look at some of your resources, and then we'll go more into what they share, because I just have these pages pulled up. This is like my commercial break I'm doing here. So here's the quiz. So I'll put the link in, the link's in Facebook, and it'll be on YouTube, and it's in the Zoom chat here. This is the new quiz.
This is the new quiz because what I found was, yes, we have the 5 stages, and the Post Betrayal Syndrome quiz is a deep dive into the symptoms, but there were so many people who just wanted to know where they were. So each stage, and I'm not going to give it away, but each stage represents a certain force of nature. I actually looked at all the flowers and plants and trees, and I was like, with where someone is likely, what they're experiencing, what plant, flower, or tree most closely resonates with that. So they become a certain force of nature, and I have a whole plan for them based on.
Well, how come there's only 4 plants? Shouldn't there be 5?
Because stage 1 happens before the experience.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so you're so smart.
You're not a plant.
So it's 2, 3, 4, and 5, but I'm not saying which is which.
Okay, awesome. This is so cool. And then here's the new book, correct?
Okay.
I got to get you some ratings. You have a lot of ratings on your old book, though.
Yeah.
Let's see that one. I'll just do a little tour here. I think it's nice
thank
to have
you.
A visual.
Yeah. But from Hardened to Healed, it was number 1 in 8 categories. What was so funny to me was it was number 1 in just in one of the categories, number 1 in depression, and number 1 new release in happiness.
Oh, how funny.
So we're really spanning all the avenues right there.
Yeah, it's so cool you wrote that so fast. It's fine. I'm finishing my mold book now, and I almost already feel like there was a section I couldn't go deep enough on, and I'm already like, it's probably just got to be the next book. Because the first one, you have to say the whole system and how it all works. And I felt like I ran out of space to go deep. And then sometimes you see what people need the most too, right? Based on.
Well, Trust Again definitely mapped out the 5 stages and the 4-step trust rebuilding process, and my personal story and the, my study participant story. And then truly when I realized that people were just getting so stuck in that stage 3, that's why I wrote From Hardened to Healed. I'm like, I'm coming for you, stage 3ers.
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah. I think we had a question pop up and go away,
Sure.
but you feel free to, I was gone now. So feel free to ask a question. You can be anonymous if you like, just, if I know this can be a little sensitive subject, but Debbie, do you want to get into this book and what you teach?
Yeah, sure. And I just see, I just popped open the chat and I see, is there an overlap between the stages?
Oh, okay, perfect.
And the way it works with the stages, the order does not switch. You don't skip a stage. You tend to outgrow a stage. But the easiest way to explain it, it's not so perfectly linear. It's more like this, like you're back and forth, but you keep going towards stage, the next stage. So it's like, I'm back here, so it's like this kind of thing. And you truly outgrow one and then you get to the next. But stage 3, that's the one. Ooh, that's the one people get stuck in.
Yeah, I've been sort of chatting about, who did I interview recently that I was chatting with this about? I think I was in fight or flight pretty much every day for a long time, like a couple years, which is pretty exhausting to your body. And I noticed, I'll just share what I've just been noticing lately, and I've just gotten through this, which is awesome. But like, to be in relationship would still be ding, 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 like super triggering. And I'm just finally able to be in relationship and be like, okay, like I don't have to control this and worry about this and think obsessively about this. I can just trust life.
And trust, that you said it, trust is one of the biggest things right here, because when trust gets shattered, it's really hard to rebuild. People ask me all the time, can trust be repaired? I say no. Can it be rebuilt? Yeah, but it takes a lot. And you have an unhealed betrayal when you have repeat betrayals. Like the faces change, but it's the same thing. So you go from relationship to relationship to relationship, and you're like, what the heck? Is it me? Yes, it is. Not in that it's your fault, in that it's your opportunity. There is a profound lesson waiting to be learned. You are lovable, worthy, deserving. You need better boundaries in place, whatever it is for you. Until and unless you get that, you will keep having opportunities in the form of people to teach you. So when that lesson is truly learned, no need to keep repeating it. So that's just one of the signs that there's definitely more work to do. But you mentioned trust. It's big. Trust is big to heal. And I like analogies and stuff, metaphors. I always get those messed up. But I look at trust like a brick wall. And the only way I know of a brick wall being built is brick by brick by brick, right? Well, every opportunity someone has to show that they're trustworthy represents one brick in that brick wall. And then think about it. In one earth-shattering series of moments, the entire wall can come tumbling down. Now, the other person who just was betrayed, who had that shattering of trust, can look at the rubble of bricks and say, I have the least bit of interest in watching this thing get rebuilt. Totally fine. You walk away. However, if they're willing to watch the big brick wall be rebuilt, that would be their job. The person who shattered the wall has to be a really good bricklayer. And it goes up the same way it went up the first time. Every opportunity they have to show that they're trustworthy, that's one brick in the brick wall. What I see so often, though, is the person whose trust was shattered, the person that's been heartbroken and betrayed, they're so sad and they're so upset and they don't like the chaos that's been created. So they're like, I'll build the brick wall. No. And what happens is, if that other person who did the shattering isn't 100% invested in rebuilding, that's where it goes bad. That makes sense?
Yes. I think you're kind of showing more rebuilding with the person or walking away. But I think if you try to rebuild with someone new, either you're going to keep attracting the same thing like you talked about, or you've kind of healed from so many things that, how can you say, you sort of attract something different, you show up differently. I've heard something recently, like your wound is like just a magnet, like pulling to you whatever is still going on. And I was like, wow, that's so interesting. I see that with, I have a lot of girlfriends who are dating again, we all attract like our same thing. Like one will attract a cheater every time. One will attract a narcissist every time.
Yeah.
Because they're still, and they've done a lot of the work, but yeah, they're still going
It
through
shows you what's left to do. Absolutely. So that's why instead of, people say, well, is it my fault? No, it really is your opportunity. You're pulling these people into your life so that you see what needs your attention, and then do the work. And it's beautiful. Like, for me, after it was, and I didn't even share my story, but at first it was a family betrayal, and I thought I did what I needed to do. And a couple of years later, it happened again. And this time it was my husband. I mean, shocked, blindsided. Anybody who's been through it, and that catapulted me into this PhD program, because I looked at it and I was like, I never took my own needs seriously. It was always about everybody else. And for me, that was the most drastic thing I could have done to show myself that I'm on my own kind of to-do list and I matter. And lesson learned, and it was a profound lesson. And I just want to make sure everybody knows too, healing and rebuilding is always a choice. Whether you rebuild yourself and move along, right? That's what I did with my family. It wasn't an option to rebuild with them. Or if the situation lends itself, if you're willing, if you want to, you rebuild something entirely new, like from the ground up new, with the person who hurt you. And that's what I did with my husband. So not long ago, as two totally different people, we married each other again.
Oh, and how many marriages need that, Debbie, right? And you share in the trust again, like how you kind of grew apart and you both were kind of disconnected from yourselves and your own spiritual lives. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's the only way we could have gotten to that point was by the complete and utter death and destruction of the old. And then that was the deal breaker. So I got him out of the house. I'm like, all right, I wasn't planning on being a single mom. Here I am, 4 kids, 6 dogs, a thriving business. I'm 50 and now I'm going back for a PhD. Like, but that was, I have to heal. There's no option here. And it's when the intention is, I'm going to heal without any idea of what's going to happen. That's when you transform. And then that's when the other person, if they're, depending on where they are in their current level of consciousness, they may choose to as well or not. That's not even your goal. That's not even you shouldn't even have that in your realm of consciousness. Your whole mission is just to heal. But there are so many people who are so afraid of that death and destruction. So they just try to patch it up and they just try to make it work. And I'll tell you, there were 3 groups in the study who did not heal. The first this was the group that they just refused to accept their betrayal. They had their story and they were sticking with it deep in stage 3. The second group, this was the group where they were numbing, avoiding, distracting. They ran to the doctor who put them on a mood stabilizer or anti-anxiety med. They started, emotionally eating, drinking, whatever. And the third group, this was the group where the betrayer had very little consequences. So whether it was out of religious reasons, that was a big one, financial fear, not wanting to break up a family, they just tried to put it behind them. And I saw 2 things. The first was with this group, the first was a further deterioration of the relationship. And the second one was, by far, this group was the most physically sick.
Wow. I think that kind of leads to a question in the chat. So I'll get to that in a second, but looking back, and we can never do things differently, right, from the past, but in my own marriage, I feel like the first time or 2 that my husband wanted to separate, I should have said, yes, like, you're not showing up for me. You're not showing up for our family, and you need to figure yourself out, which is what you're saying. Like, go. Like, I trust that the best thing's going to come out of that. But instead I was like so clingy and patching, like you said, that, he never had the space. We never had the space to like start afresh when, when it, I don't know, kind of like when maybe it still could have been patched together.
And you know what though? And I just want to make sure everyone knows, we look at it and say, oh, but I'm so weak. It's really not. It's that you have such faith in humanity. You have such faith in the marriage. You have it's so inconceivable to so many of us when we've been betrayed. We're thinking through our lens, and we can't even imagine that someone could even do these things. So we're trying to make sense out of it. So it's just really important that I don't want anybody just so down on themselves because they've been trying, because it's the natural thing to do. Of course you wanted that. But what I also invite you to do is turn it around a little bit. And would you ever behave in that same way? And if you were, what would you expect from that other person? And what I see so often, especially with smart, savvy women, I see where, I mean, guys too, but I see this mostly with women, they're so willing to give 110% and accept like 20. Like, what's that about?
And that'll make you sick too, and resentful and unhappy. Yeah. And then you mentioned when there's no consequences, that person gets really sick, which I think kind of leads to the question in the chat. Like, how do you know, what she said, are there other indicators, example, well-being, etc., other than attracting people to let you know you're healed? So I would think one thing is physical health improves.
Yeah, well, definitely physical health. Here's the thing. I can spot an unhealed betrayal a mile away, and it shows up in health, in work, in relationships like this. In relationships, it'll show up in one of two ways. Repeat betrayal, like I mentioned before, right? You keep getting opportunities in the form of people to teach you something, or you put the big wall up. You're like, nope, no one's getting near me again. That was way too painful. We think it's coming from a place of strength, and it's not. It's coming from fear. The other way, in health, people go to the most well-meaning, amazing doctors, coaches, healers, therapists to manage a stress-related symptom, illness, condition, disease. At the root of it is an unhealed betrayal. For example, like I said, 45% of people who've been betrayed have a digestive issue. So they can go to the most well-meaning, amazing gut expert. But if that expert isn't highly skilled in betrayal, and why would they be, right?
Sure.
They can only take that patient, that client so far. So, I mean, that's why with our certification, we certify doctors, coaches, healers, therapists, because then when they know, now imagine a gut expert knows the 5 stages, can actually move people through it. Now think about how that gut would be healed, right? We also see it at work. In work, we'll see it in a few ways. Like, think about it. You want to ask for that raise or promotion. You deserve it, but your confidence was shattered in the betrayal. So you don't have the confidence to ask, and you're bitter and resentful. Or you want to be a team player or a collaborative partner or a JV, joint venture partner, but the person you trusted the most proved untrustworthy. How do you trust that boss, that coworker, that partner? Shows up everywhere. So to answer your question, if I didn't answer it that way, I would say, if you are not maxed out with your level of health, relationships, love, abundance, there's something there that's in your way. It could just be a limiting belief, but something's blocking you.
I like that definition. It's like, if you don't freaking have it all,
that's it. That's really it.
Is wrong. I wanted to say, I do see in the functional medicine community, and hallelujah, I do see more talk about trauma and unhealed trauma. So that's great. I don't know if you're getting those invitations as well. You probably are. I think it was missing. And as I went through, here I go again, my mold journey, I was really hurt and honestly kind of betrayed by some of my practitioners who were so busy giving me new supplements and not seeing like how much I was suffering emotionally, like so unsupported, so, devastated. And to it's actually the opposite of when my divorce healing, I really went for all the emotional support quickly. But with the mold, I was just like, are you not seeing this? Like, and to even hear some of like NDs be like, well, do you have a friend? Like, who are you going to call if you want to commit suicide? I'm like, that's all you're telling me like right now? Like, just speak to me like a human, like, a fellow human having a hard time.
And think about it. Now, here you are trusting this person and they're shattering that trust.
Yeah. And they didn't know, but I, like you said, people could do this training now, and, makes me think about doing the training now. In my mold book, it is full of emotional support. And this is how you're going to feel emotionally at this stage. And this is kind of similar to what you're saying. And, identify your resources, like take care of yourself, prioritize, because I could just write a book about supplements. There's plenty of those books out there, but I know it's a traumatizing experience, and I want people to like thrive through it. So I think it's just so important, the work you're doing. What a great discovery you made. Yeah, thank you so much. I think there's one question in the Q&A, and I know we didn't maybe fully go into your methodology for stage 3.
Mhm. Well, I mean, that's in the, really, you could find out in the quiz if that would serve. But if you're stuck, actually, you know what? Do we have a minute so people can write down a few questions?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay.
And I hope I did not answer that or ask that in the right way, but I think we said, what about stage 3? Like, what do you do about it? Right. I don't know if we've fully gotten into that
Yeah.
yet.
Well, and here's
Okay.
how you know if you're even stuck in stage 3. So these are 4 questions, and
Okay.
I invite you to write these down. And that's my way of saying write these down. Ready? So the first one is, am I numbing, avoiding, distracting? If so, how? Call yourself on it. Do you walk in a room? You're not in the kitchen. You're not the least bit hungry, and you're in the cabinets. Do you walk into a room, turn on the TV just to drown out the sound of your own thoughts? Like, call yourself on it. The second question: what am I pretending not to see? Am I pretending not to see I hate my job? Am I pretending not to see my relationship is in trouble? Am I pretending not to see that health issue that needs my attention? Right? Be honest. The third question: what's life going to look like in 5 to 10 years if I do nothing? Keep doing exactly what you're doing and play it all the way out 5 to 10 years. Take that relationship that you're ignoring, that issue, 5 to 10 years. What does it look like? Take that health issue, ignore it, play it out 5 to 10 years. What's it looking like in work? What does that look like in 5 to 10 years if I do nothing? And what can life look like in 5 to 10 years if I change now? I'm not saying it's easy, but transformation happens and begins when you tell yourself the truth.
Those are the best questions ever for, so many different situations.
Mm-hmm.
I know we talked about earlier how our marriages or lives can get stuck in a rut. Can we,
Yep.
stop and ask that? So there's a question on the Q&A. I think she's going to say, does it count as a betrayal if a father leaves?
Yeah. Well, it could even be something like betrayal of expectations. You had a certain idea of what should be going on in your home growing up. And when that isn't the case, it's a betrayal. It's like you didn't sign up for that. You had this idea. And there's a loss, there's a grieving process, there's a whole, yeah, absolutely. And then think about it. Something like that can lead to a lack of safety. And you don't feel safe. And then if that's not acknowledged, if that's not worked, if that's not healed, you take that lack of safety into everything you do.
Yeah, I think the word betrayal is a lot broader than people realize. And the word trust also, which, well, we have actually a decent amount of people on now, but I was like, people might be like, what is this betrayal stuff?
Yeah.
We think it's about like a soap opera, like, oh, there's some drama. And then I'm checking his phone secretly. It's not, it's so much broader than that. And yeah, I think like you said, it's like expectations. It's like, there's nothing wrong with your expectations. If you expected your parents to pay attention to you or your husband to stay or whatever it is, like those are valid. And you lost something when that wasn't met, like you said. I think there's one more. Okay, so maybe I'll take this as the last question. She said, can you speak to the common "we signed a contract" philosophy so many purport versus the doctor said we didn't sign up for it? I don't quite.
I'm not quite sure, but just to sum it up to see if I catch it here. A betrayal is really the breaking of that spoken or unspoken rule. And every relationship has them. And without our awareness or consent, someone chose to break the rules. And that's why it's so shocking, because we were abiding by the rules and that other person just decided, nope, I'm not going to. And it's an absolute shock. And because this is the person we gave our trust to, right? That's why it's so shocking. But I'll tell you, I remember when I was doing this study, it was we could be betrayed by so many people, so many things, even something like this. I found this so interesting. A company, and there's something, I think it's called the love turns to hate principle. We would rather knowingly purchase something we know is bad for us than find out from a company we thought something was good and it turns out it wasn't good for us. We don't want to be duped. And we
Yeah.
would rather, like, let's say, if I'm just thinking of cigarettes, you smoke cigarettes, you would rather buy those cigarettes because you're like, okay, at least, they're kind of honest about it, right? Then buy something that's like, oh, we're so great for you. We have all these amazing ingredients. And then we find out it's not. That's when love turns to hate so quickly. So, things like that can anger us. Friends can infuriate us. And originally the study was the betrayal of a family member, partner, or friend. I actually had to drop the friend part because while the friends infuriate us, and they can if they betray us, they don't break us. Of course, we're never broken, bent. You know what I mean? They don't break us like the family member or the partner. Those are the ones that just do us in.
I can see that. So she kind of clarified, I think she's saying some people sign sort of an energetic karmic contract that these are their parents or what have you, versus you're saying, no, we didn't. Or I said, no, you didn't sign up for that.
Oh, so then totally different thing. Okay. So then to address that, I mean, this is going to be a very spiritual answer here. And a lot of people may think, oh, now she's off the deep end. So, listen, I'm just going to say what happened. I do believe we choose these people for a very specific reason. And I'll never forget when I was healing from my own experience, because I didn't trust, my husband, I didn't trust my family, I didn't trust myself. I'm like, I have to trust in something bigger than me. So I actually met with an intuitive coach because I was like, she's got a direct line. I need some help here. And I met with her. And the first time I go into her office, I didn't even sit down. She starts laughing. Like, what? She goes, oh, how you two planned this. I'm like, what did you just say? She goes, yeah. He needed something so catastrophic to crash and burn so he can be the husband, father, friend he's supposed to be. You needed something so big so you can really learn and teach from this deep place of knowing. You're going to have an institute. You're going to write books. You're going to have this big following around betrayal. I'm like, you're crazy.
You should have given her a big tip.
She's in all my books.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, it's so true. I have a coach just Tuesday because I've worked for 2 years now. And she says, well, here you go again, attracting the same old pattern. Like she will just call it, but because she knows now I can hear it and like it's light for me. So I think it is like we do get these lessons for a reason, and not to say anyone deserves anything bad to happen to them. It's just the growth. But
I'll tell you, what I have found is betrayal lends itself to creating this version of you that never would have had the opportunity to show up had that not happened. And the way it works is you're creating an entirely new identity. You leave behind everything that no longer serves and you take what does and you build on that. Like, for example, I realized post betrayal, I was like, I'm so hard on myself. I'm always like, go and do and strive. And I'm like, and then if I would do something wrong, I would call myself names. It just wasn't nice at all. So after betrayal, as I was recreating this version of myself who I want to be, like, for example, I get lost wherever I go. It's just what happens. So I know, leave more time because you're probably going to get lost, right? So, and I would get so angry at myself. And after betrayal, I was like, you know what? I'm not doing that anymore. Now, whenever I do something like that, I'm simply adorable. And everyone has to go along with it too. The kids, my husband, they all have to go along with it. So it's things like that. We get to define and redefine the rules and who we want to be. And that's part of the beauty.
I had a coach say that to me too. It's just like, Bridgit, what if you just accept that you, with all your quirks and anxieties, there was someone's just going to love all of that. And I was like, yeah, that feels amazing, actually, what
about if you just love all of that?
And you have to start with you. Yeah. You have to start with like, the belief that I'm lovable just as I am is really kind of what she was saying. Well, there's so much more we could talk about, but I think we've kind of left it a good place. The quiz is in the notes, you guys. So if you came late, the quiz is there. That'll help. I do put the recording on YouTube really quickly. I'll go share that link real quick. And then I put the link to the most recent book in the chat. Let me just copy it one more time. But it's on Amazon. It's called From Hardened to Healed. And then the earlier one was Trust Again. If you are a practitioner, she has an institute. I think that same link, is it PBT Institute?
The PBT is in Post Betrayal Transformation, the PBT Institute. Yeah, we have our certification program, and People love it. I mean, they become certified and they just work on their own, or there could be an opportunity to work within the community, and they specialize in their area of expertise, and teach a class a week. So members get to know, like, and trust them. And then they see members, and then I pay them.
Yeah, so you can study it, or you can be a client, so to speak, either one. And then these other resources as well. Anything I missed? Anything else to share? Do you still have your podcast?
You know, this is a very crazy thing. 235 episodes in, and just last week I was grabbing one of the recorded. I had 20, 30 recordings, and this is the universe, right? 20, 30 recordings with intros, with outros. And I went to grab the next one so we could prepare it and get it ready, and they've all been deleted.
Oh no.
So I looked at it. First I panicked, right? And I was like, oh, I could probably do this and probably do that. And then I was like, oh, I get it. I was supposed to be done with the podcast for now.
Oh man,
so,
it's tiring. I've been done with 2 podcasts already at this point. I think real carefully before starting again. But there's all those ones already there on iTunes.
235 episodes with the most amazing experts. I mean, it's
wow,
great.
That's a lot. I remember when you just started that thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And I know we're going to get a lot of interest on the back end, and really getting people to heal and live their best life, which is
thank you so much, and thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Debbie. Thanks for everyone who's on. I'll just tell you what's coming up next week real quick. It's always a surprise to me too. Like, what is next week? Let's see, 1 second.
Someone's saying the chat is empty.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yes, mine also. Huh.
Oh, I don't know what happened.
I see everything in chat. I wonder what happened.
Oh, next week is a good one. I have my friend Jacqueline on. She's going to talk about breast implant illness and removal, and that she just went through. So I get that might be not a topic everyone thinks today, but I think it's fascinating. I was so into that topic. So you never know what you're going to learn, even if you think, oh, that doesn't quite apply to me. So that's going to be a good one. And we'll see you next week, everyone. Thank you so much. Oh yeah, I don't know what happened in the chat. Let me see if I can fix it.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone. See you next week.